Imagine a quiet council house in northern England. A pebble-dashed semi on an ordinary street, identical to every other box on the estate. Now picture that same house with every light dead, the curtains breathing in a windless room, and the sound of heavy, wet footsteps slowly crossing an empty landing. No one is home. The neighbors know the family is away on holiday. Yet as the sky over Pontefract turns the flat gray of evening, a silhouette is seen at the upstairs window of 30 East Drive, standing perfectly still, like a figure on a gallows. A phone call is made. A relative unlocks the front door, steps inside, and finds the carpet soaked with water, the kitchen scattered with sugar and tea leaves, and something unseen breathing in the dark above the stairs. Later, the witnesses will insist one detail above all: whatever was in that house felt aware of them, and it did not want them there. That house is real. It still stands at 30 East Drive, on the Chequerfield estate in Pontefract, West Yorkshire. To estate agents, it is a modest 3-bedroom former council property. To many paranormal researchers, it is the site of one of Europe's most violent alleged poltergeist infestations, a case that has terrified investigators, inspired books and films, and driven several occupants from their beds. The story begins in August 1966, when Joe and Jean Pritchard moved into the house with their 2 children, 15-year-old Philip and 12-year-old Diane. It was a new start on a post-war estate that promised indoor bathrooms, central heating, and a sense of community. The Pritchards were not looking for the supernatural. Joe worked long shifts as a building inspector. Jean kept the house. They went to church, paid their rent, and, by all accounts, wanted nothing more than an ordinary life. The first disturbances did not arrive with thunderclaps. They came quietly, like mistakes. While the family holidayed at the seaside, Joe's mother, Sarah, and his sister, Marie, stayed at the house. One hot afternoon, according to their later accounts, a cold wind blew through the living room, scattering curtains and papers, yet every door and window was closed. Seconds later, fine white powder began to fall from chest height in the middle of the room, as if someone were sprinkling it from invisible hands. Thinking it was a burst pipe, they called the water board. Inspectors arrived, cut off the supply, and still the puddles continued to form on the kitchen floor, appearing in neat circles and then vanishing as soon as cloth touched them. When Sarah tried to mop, the bristles of the brush flew out across the linoleum. A plant pot lifted and emptied itself onto the worktop. A clock began to swing from side to side, bolted firmly to the wall. According to Marie, a heavy chest of drawers slid out into the hall, barring the way, as if the house itself were setting its own rules. When the Pritchards returned from holiday, they were skeptical. Teenage Philip was blamed. The idea that their rented home might be haunted seemed absurd. But the activity did not stop. Lights flicked on and off by themselves. Pools of water appeared in front of witnesses. Green foam bubbled from taps and coated the sink. Objects vanished from one room and reappeared stacked in another. According to later interviews, even visiting police officers saw doors slam and bang without visible cause. The family gave the unseen presence a casual nickname, Fred, in an attempt to control their fear. Yet patterns emerged. The disturbances seemed to focus on Diane, the youngest. She was slapped, her hair pulled, her bedclothes yanked away. One night her mattress reportedly shook so violently that her brother screamed for their parents. On another occasion, witnesses claimed they saw her dragged up the stairs by an invisible grip, deep red finger marks later appearing around her throat. Family members, neighbors, and visiting clergy described the same strange mix of childish pranks and calculated menace. Sweet jars unscrewed themselves and rained their contents down the stairs. Heavy sideboards shuddered and walked across rooms. Chairs flipped over on command, as if responding to an unheard voice. On the living room walls, crude chalk messages appeared, one allegedly reading, "I am here." According to multiple accounts, an icy presence would sometimes fill the hallway, thick and oppressive, making it hard to breathe. In time, the reports took on a darker shape. Several witnesses, including members of the Pritchard family, claimed to see a hooded figure in black robes, face obscured, standing silently on the landing or at the end of Diane's bed. It became known in the media as the Black Monk of Pontefract, though historians have never confirmed the local legend that a condemned monk once swung from a gallows on or near the site. A local priest was asked to bless the house. Holy water was sprinkled in the rooms, prayers were said, and for a time the disturbances seemed to subside. Then they returned with more violence. Crucifixes were reportedly smashed and religious pictures shredded. According to one account, a small statue of Christ was thrown to the floor and left with what appeared to be tears of blood painted down its face. News of the haunting spread beyond Pontefract. Local newspapers carried stories of the Phantom of East Drive. Journalists visited and described objects flying across rooms in full view. Paranormal researchers and writers, including Clive Harold and later Colin Wilson, documented interviews with the family and witnesses, trying to piece together a timeline from years of overlapping, often traumatic episodes. Among the many reported incidents, one stands out in almost every retelling. One evening, Diane was allegedly lifted and thrown across her bedroom by an unseen force. Her screams brought the family racing upstairs. According to several accounts, they found her on the floor, shaken but alive. Later, in a still more disturbing episode, she was discovered at the top of the stairs, unconscious, with a length of electrical cable knotted tightly around her neck, as if someone had attempted to hang her. Between the outbursts, life in the house settled into a kind of siege. At night, the family lay in their separate rooms listening. Sometimes there were heavy dragging sounds in the hall, as if furniture were being pushed inch by inch, though nothing had moved by morning. At other times, there was nothing at all, just a pressing silence broken only by the refrigerator and the faint hiss of the estate outside. Children laughing on distant pavements while inside the walls seemed to hold their breath. There were attempts to confront whatever was in the house. According to the Pritchards, an exorcism was arranged. A priest walked from room to room reciting prayers while the family watched. During the ritual, objects reportedly flew through the air. A jug smashed against a wall. A heavy sideboard trembled. When the priest commanded the presence to leave, a freezing blast swept down the stairs, and a deep, male voice was said to roar, "Get out." The blessings, they claimed, did not end the haunting. Over the years, the phenomena reportedly ebbed and flowed. There were months of relative quiet followed by sudden, violent flurries of activity. Visitors who knew nothing of the stories described feeling watched on the stairs, or refusing to enter the cold, narrow cupboard under those stairs at all. According to some accounts, Diane never fully escaped the attention of Fred until she left home as an adult. Eventually, the family's most turbulent years in the house passed. Joe and Jean remained at 30 East Drive long after their children moved out. Joe died first. Jean lived alone in the property. Reports suggest that even in later years, strange knocks and small disturbances would still occasionally break the quiet, as if whatever had once raged there had settled into a colder, watching presence. After Jean Pritchard left the house, it eventually came onto the market. In the early 2010s, film producer Bill Bungay bought 30 East Drive after being involved with a horror movie loosely based on the case. Rather than renovate and forget its history, he left much of the interior as it was and began allowing paranormal teams and investigators to spend nights there, recording whatever they could capture. Television programs such as Most Haunted and Paranormal Lockdown filmed overnight vigils inside 30 East Drive. Crews reported sudden temperature drops, unexplained bangs, and equipment failures. In some episodes, muffled voices and groans were caught on audio. Skeptics argue that any sounds in an old, sparsely furnished house can be misheard. That suggestion and fear prime investigators to see patterns and shadows. Yet the case continues to draw teams from around the world, each secretly afraid that the house might finally one day notice them.